Uh huh. That's right. That's just TMI with your hosts, Dee Dee and Sir Dre. Thought provoking, motivational, inspirational. Let's hear what they have to say.
Welcome to That's Just TMI. It's your girl D.
Yeah, Sir Dre. Sir Dre. All right, fine.
We
I'll be
told
it.
you it would be
Yeah.
coming to a screen near you, and
Yeah.
here we are.
Yes. I'm so excited. I'm a little bit nervous though, but I am excited.
I'm more nervous than excited. I
Why are
think.
you nervous?
Because it's like a baby. It's the birth of something so amazing, and it can be nerve-wracking.
yeah.
You know, those who have a child for the first time, they're like, don't know
Yeah,
what to
yeah.
expect. Yeah.
Oh
that's
yeah,
right.
I know.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. I'm sorry that you chose that as your first analogy. So much imagery that goes into all of that.
Oh Lord.
Wow. Anyways, so this is good, Dee Dee. I'm glad that you actually have made some time. Can we just tell everybody? We might as well. We might as well.
I guess.
So within the last 3 weeks now, is it
No,
been 3
it's
weeks?
been
Two?
more.
It's been more than that?
Yeah,
A month?
It's been over a month.
Oh my goodness, time flies.
I tell you.
And I'm looking, pointing. You can't see him, but her husband.
I got married.
Yeah, she got woke.
He put a ring.
Is it
on
woke? Is that even appropriate?
I feel like we're not using that.
All right, we're not using that
joking.
term. But anyways, want to say to you, congratulations.
Thank
We're
you.
excited for you. We're praying for you, and we just look. Your husband's a great guy, and you're all right.
I mean,
you're all right
I
too.
think
You're all right.
He lucked out.
Yeah,
but
he lucked
hey.
out. So, anyways, we should tell those that will watch this. We should tell them who we are in terms of how do we
Definitely.
get here, because there's like a journey. There's a story
There's a
that goes along with this. Yeah.
Yep. So, when did this start? A couple months back, I had a dream.
Sure. You're-
No,
yeah, definitely a dream.
I sat down and I first spoke to Akeem, who was my fiance at the time.
Yeah, fiance.
And I said, I think that, we lack something within our community, within our churches, within our age range.
Yeah.
We lack a platform where we can speak about real
Now,
issues.
when you say we, you mean you and him. I'm out of your age range.
Yes. So
Yeah.
myself and my friends, we
Yeah.
talk about different things, be it relationship, finances, world issues, but it just goes right there. Once you hang up the phone, that's it. But I find that so many of my friends are having the same issues.
Yeah.
Right? So I felt like we needed to bring this to the people
Yeah.
because we're all experiencing it.
And create somewhat of a platform, right?
Yes.
And this is important because I don't think that it's that your age group doesn't have a voice. And we were just talking about this before
That's
we went
right.
online.
Yes.
You guys are always saying something somewhere.
I mean.
But in terms of having the platform
Definitely.
that allows your voice to be in a space where people will listen to it in a credible kind of way,
Yep.
at times that doesn't happen. I mean, even when you look
Exactly.
at the news, the anchors are a certain age. Even on Facebook Live and Instagram
Yeah.
Live, even, at times the balance is not there.
Yep. And so we wanted it to be something that was focused on our age range, but had a little bit of
A senior,
Old Spice.
an
I call
Old
it that.
Spice. You
Yes.
know what? You're not nice. Old Spice.
Yes. So
I should have brought that
hence
red bottle
surgery.
and then just put it on the table. Old Spice. All
yeah.
right, Red
so,
Spice.
They always say, as a young person, you'll never learn anything unless you take the knowledge from those who went before you.
Yeah.
Right.
okay.
So you're here to kind of keep me in line.
Yeah, I'm
and
going to
keep
try
me in
to.
check,
I don't know if
know?
I can, but I'm going to do the best that I can.
Because sometimes I may talk about something that I may not be as experienced in, but I know my friends and I are going through some stuff, so I
Yeah.
can be like, Sir Dre,
And
come on."
vice versa, right?
Yeah.
Because even though you might be a little bit younger than I am,
Mm-hmm.
here's the reality. There are some things that your age group is beginning to experience that I've never experienced before in my whole entire life.
Mm-hmm.
And so, it's not just me to you, but it will also be you to me. And,
Yep.
and the hope is that we will learn. One of the things that I think that we don't do well enough as a culture, it's not transgenerational enough.
That's true.
Right? We often put different people, pick different pockets in the room, and this age group talks about this and that, but hopefully this will start the conversation that will hopefully lead to transgenerational communication. Now, so you had this conversation with your husband, your fiance at the time, talking about giving your age group a platform to have a conversation, and then boom, it's funny the way things happen. Then we met here at the church because we had been doing some premarital counseling and stuff like that, and we were just talking about what the wedding would look like and all that other stuff during COVID-19. And then we looked around the space and we were like, okay, we can have a conversation right here. And so guess what? We are right here in the building, but this won't be the only place that we have the TMI conversation.
Because we can't be boxed up between four walls.
Yeah, that's right.
This thing is real, and it's in the world, and we want to go into the world.
So then maybe for the sake of those that are watching us for the very first time, maybe we can expand a little bit more on the idea around TMI, too much information.
And I love it. I actually really love the name. Just the other day, I was looking at it again, and I'm like, I don't think that we could have chosen a better name.
I like the name. Because it's misleading, right?
Very much so.
Because for somebody that's like, okay, too much information, they might be thinking inappropriate, but the goal is not to be inappropriate. It's to maybe talk about things that people wouldn't normally talk about. It's about expressing ourselves in a kind of way where people can get a sense of, this is how Gen Zers, is that what you are?
I'm
millennial. No, you're a millennial.
I'm a millennial.
I think I'm X.
Are you sure you're not a baby boomer?
I'm not a baby boomer.
I kid.
Wow. Wow. Okay. All right. Baby boomer.
No, he's not a baby boomer.
Yeah.
But yes, exactly. The too much information. Sometimes you go to your parents and you ask them, can I do so-and-so, or should I do X, Y, Z? And they say no, and you say why. But they don't give you the information.
That's right.
And that's what I hated as a child. I hated not getting the information. And then growing up in society, you always hear more information, more power, more knowledge, more power. Right? But you're not getting that knowledge.
Right.
So I wanted to have this platform to provide our age group.
And I'm glad that we are, because at the end of the day, through this platform, through this avenue, and of course we'll put some things through Facebook, we'll put some things through Instagram, we'll put some things through YouTube. The reality is that ultimately we want to get to a place where nothing is off the table.
That is exactly right.
I think knowledge is important, and so therefore I'm glad that I'm going to get to hear your voice, and definitely, you know me, you're going to hear my voice. And so of course, like, where we wanted to start today is what everybody's talking about.
What's happening in society right now.
You can't avoid it.
No.
And of course, for those of you that are watching, if you want to put your comments in the message center,
definitely
the chat space, whatever it's called, feel free to do so. We want to hear what you're thinking. We want to hear your responses. The goal of TMI is not to be the dominant voice.
No.
We're not saying that we are the ultimate authorities behind this. All we're saying is we have a perspective. We could be wrong. We could be right, but we want to have this conversation that engages this community. And don't be afraid to ask your grandma, your grandfather, your uncle, your aunt, your little brother or your little sister, because we want them to come in on this conversation. So, Deandra, here's the thing. Here we are. 2020, whoa. You've seen all the memes on the internet. I've never seen a year like this.
Listen.
Okay.
I want to go back to 2019 and wish that I could just hit the pause button and just stop right there. Ooh, I can't.
No, you
can't. Because then I wouldn't get married.
That's right. You wouldn't be married, and the truth is, we wouldn't be having this conversation without 2020. And look, if I'm to be completely honest with you, especially since today, the reason why I'm in a suit is not because I'm a boomer. I had to do a funeral earlier today. Here is the reality. This 2020 has been a blessing despite.
Yes.
And the reason why I say that is, never before are you watching the various institutions changing the framework for how they think.
Yep.
You know, like historically, like church would operate a certain way, business would operate a certain way.
Yep.
And of course, because we're going to talk a little bit about social justice today,
Yes.
policing historically has
Operate
functioned in a
way.
certain kind of way. And so to me, I kind of like the idea in principle or now in praxis with the fact that the world has now changed.
Yes.
Like, it's not going to be the same
Of course
ever
not.
again.
And it's kind of
Yeah.
scary at the same time because
Yeah.
when you look at it and you're trying to figure out what will be the new normal, what will that look like? How,
Right.
you know, after lining up to get into stores and waiting forever and being locked in your house for weeks upon end and only being able to go out for groceries, like what will the world look like?
Yeah.
But we have seen so many changes thus far, even in the course of a month.
Yes, and of course, the largest change that we've seen thus far is this attention that is now being placed on social justice.
Yes.
Like, can I just tell you, you know, like when you've been waiting your whole life for something to happen, and it does, and you're like in a fog because you're like, nah, this can't really be what it is. I mean, I've had these conversations on several different platforms with several different groups, and I'm still going to be talking about it with others moving forward. But
Definitely.
can you believe that now racism is no longer, as a talking point, inappropriate in all spaces?
I know.
Like, you know, like, of course, because I'm the boomer, and I'm not going to let you live this one down. You know, when we were like younger, coming up in the workforce, there were certain things that you would never talk about. You wouldn't talk about your salary, and you would never talk about race. It was just not appropriate.
Yeah.
And now, no matter where you go, I mean, the other day I was looking on Facebook and on the news. You know, I think it's in New York. They've painted on the city street, Black Lives Matter.
Yep.
That would have never happened
Oh,
in
of course not.
1999 or 2019. Sorry, see, I'm dating myself again. But here's the reality. Social justice is where we're at right now.
Yep.
I'd love to know, like, what does this look like in terms of your generation? There's a quote.
Actually, I was gonna get
Yeah,
to
yeah,
it.
yeah,
Well,
yeah.
there's a tweet, and I absolutely love this tweet. Her name is Rayvon Justice.
Yeah,
I hope I'm saying her name properly. You can follow her on Twitter, I guess, at
Yeah.
Roach
yeah,
Justice 10.
yeah,
That's what it says.
yeah,
Okay. So it says what COVID and racism have in common. People don't believe they exist
yeah,
if they haven't been affected personally.
yeah.
How real is that? Let me tell you,
Okay,
when
go,
COVID
go.
first started,
Yeah.
or when it became this big thing, you know, and we
Yeah.
actually had to stay home from work,
Yeah,
I said to myself, okay, I'm going to go outside and I'm going to make sure I put on my mask. My now husband,
yeah,
he was like,
Yeah.
COVID is not real.
Yeah.
You know, it's just like the flu.
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
You don't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
And I said, really?
Yeah.
You think so? Then, you know, unfortunately, certain people's, you know, lives dying
Yeah.
and all that stuff, life happened.
Yeah.
And we're realizing how real it is.
yes,
That is the same thing with racism.
yeah,
People often say, I mean, I'm 26. All my life I've heard, you know,
I'm not telling what my age is, so you can self-disclose all you want.
they
Yeah.
haven't talked about racism. You know,
Yeah.
you hear about Black History Month, and
Yeah.
during Black History Month, you talk about every black person that has ever done anything. And then
Yeah.
after February,
That's it.
you think we're going to talk about it again? And that used to upset
Yeah.
me.
Yeah,
But now I am so happy that unfortunately those situations have caused people to be more open and
Yeah.
talk about it with your children.
Yeah.
And we're seeing changes. You know, the Breonna Taylor
Yeah.
and the law that has been passed
Sure.
with that. That
Yeah, yeah.
is something that's so
can't
big
just
that-
bust in somebody's house and just start shooting anymore.
which is just ridiculous that arrest the police officers for Breonna Taylor because we're
Please.
sick and tired.
Please.
But I can't believe that we're months along, and she's my age.
Right.
So that hit me differently because
Sure.
I'm like, you are young, you have a future, you're
Yeah.
trying to be somebody.
Yes.
You are black.
Yes.
You are educated, and you are in your bed sleeping.
That's right.
Sleeping.
That's right.
These little things.
Yeah.
But yes, that tweet.
Well, you know what's
felt it.
interesting? maybe the angle that I kind of saw this thing from, I did believe that something was coming regardless. I mean, it just felt like there was too much of a lull.
Yeah.
Like something, give me a war, give me a pestilence, give me something so that I can go back to Matthew 24 or Matthew 25. But here's the reality. Aside from the disbelief in COVID, COVID created an opportunity for everybody to not be busy when something happened. Like, I mean, you think about it, right? I mean, you're married now and stuff like that, but even prior to getting married, you have your schedule. You're going to the grocery store, maybe you're in school, maybe you're taking, working a secondary job, you name it. But COVID kind of just slowed everything down to the point where when George Floyd was killed by those police officers, and by the way, he is my age, right? I'm 45, I think he's 46, but here's the reality. If there was no COVID, that story would have come and gone like, shoom, because this is not the first time that something like this happened. And of course, because of my age, I remember Rodney King in Los Angeles when they beat that guy. I mean, when you saw the footage of what happened to him, the guy's face, when you saw what happened in Los Angeles, it was like a big deal while it was a big deal, and then it went away.
Yeah, it just died off.
And it's interesting because even with what happened with Rodney King way back then, and even with what we're looking at now, it's completely different. It's almost like George Floyd awoke the lion.
Yes.
Or the elephant in the room. Because the reality is that as black people, I almost said people of color, but I'm a black man, and I need to say that because it's different. There are different nuances. As a black man, I don't know that I've ever seen an entire planet unite around a black cause. I've never seen it. I mean, even when we look at the civil rights movement, you know, it feels more localized. Even when we look at apartheid in South Africa with Nelson Mandela, it feels more localized, even though you see more glimpses of people getting on board. But this George Floyd thing has, and can I just say, it's the worst time at times, I believe, to be alive, and then it's the best time. Because we now, after 400 plus years, are on the cusp of literally changing or at least engaging the framework for how we do politics and race.
And I love it. I will never forget the day I woke up and I was on Instagram and I saw that they were doing a Black Lives Matter march in Australia. And to me, that was like so far-fetched.
Australia.
Because I'm like, how did it get all the way to Australia? And you know, the day before it was in England, and I'm like, okay, you know, I know that a lot of black people migrate to England, you know, because I have family there, Kima's family there. So I'm like, okay, yeah. And of course, if you see it in Canada, you're also thinking, we're right next door to the States. So of course, but Australia, who I think, and this may just be something that I need to get knowledge on, but I think is a predominantly white society. Right?
Or
so
at least that's the way it looks from the outside in.
And from the TV that I watch.
And we know that there are a lot of people of color in Australia. I hear you.
Yes.
But to believe that the impact of what happened in America would have shot all the way over there.
Far-fetched. I didn't think it. I didn't think it would.
And I think that's where this platform for your age group comes in. Because I don't believe that if the world was engaging you guys using social media this way, that information would have gotten out that quickly.
That's right.
Big up to Facebook and Instagram.
Listen,
I'm not saying I love everything about their policies. All I'm saying is big up to them.
Yeah, because that was I mean, that's how I saw everything that was taking place. And from that, you know, you have the ability to share it to so many different people. And you, with iPhones, I don't know how Androids work, you can screen record. So if there's somebody who doesn't have Instagram and they can't see it, I can still screen record it and send it to somebody. So technology, and I think like what you said, is so important. Because we were slowed down because of COVID, we were all at home and we're all scrolling through social media and we're flipping through every news channel that exists.
That's right.
That's how we were able to see it. And that's why I think that the Black Lives Matter movement in 2020 is, I'm going to say is because it's still happening, one of the best things I've ever seen, because globally we all acted. We didn't sit down and we didn't say, okay, let's see what this country's going to do. We got up
Yeah, and we marched. And can I tell you, never in my life, my 40, almost 45 years of life, I've never marched anywhere for anything.
Yep.
I mean, I've protested, or maybe you might want to call that being passive aggressive, but never in my whole entire life, my family and I, we got up and we went marching. I want to say maybe a week after the George Floyd event. We went downtown in Toronto here, that's where we're located, and we marched. And let me just tell you, as we were moving through the streets, there were two things that I felt in that moment. Number one, I felt the pain of black people as they were walking through the streets. But then I also felt this kind of, you got this sense of sadness.
Yep.
You know, because yes, we know that racism exists, but when you look and you see that somebody has been killed by somebody who's supposed to serve and protect. And it's the gall, right? It's the gall of watching this police officer put his hands in his pocket. And the truth is, I tried it because I wanted to see. I didn't try it on somebody. I'm just saying, I tried it because I wanted to get a sense of what was he doing. And the truth is, when I put my hands in my pocket, kneeling down and whatever not, you're literally putting more leverage on the person's neck. So I don't know whether or not they're going to put him to premeditated. I don't know what the final charge is going to be. But the reality is that as we were marching and as we were moving and as I was looking at the crowd, and it wasn't just black people marching. Let me just say that.
I know that.
It was black people, it was white people, it was Filipino people, it was South American people, it was you name it. Everybody was walking in the streets. And you know what was liberating for me?
What?
Watching some of my white brethren, and I didn't know the people we were watching with, but just watching white people become emphatically energized around this injustice, I felt a sense of hope in that moment. I really did.
That's really amazing.
It was really encouraging. It was powerful.
And you know, I have no brothers. I have a father, and now I have a husband, and that's like, in terms of my immediate family, those are the men that are there. And watching different scenes, because you know the injustice took place and a lot of people have endured their fair share of injustice as well. And seeing it, I got angry. I got very angry, and I looked at Keem and I said, let us live in America and let somebody dare try and do nothing to you. And I started to get very angry, and I was able to, you know, be grateful in the fact that, yes, I'm not directly impacted, but indirectly, I am still in pain. I am still hurting for those families because, again, had it had been anybody that's like right here to me, I would lose my mind.
Well, you know what's interesting, Deandra? For me, I had some mixed emotions with it. Number one, I was sad watching what could have been a brother. I don't have a brother either, but I have siblings. He could have been a brother to me. Watching him die that way was hard. So I had sympathy and empathy towards him. But you know what it also did? It triggered for me so many experiences of systemic racism. So I'm not saying that you don't have the same struggle as I do. I mean, we're both black. You're a woman. You're dark in complexion, so am I. But I don't know that your experiences are exactly the way that your husband and myself would experience things.
Definitely not.
Like in terms of profiling by the police, some of the things that happen to us in the workplace because there are certain expectations or lack thereof when we walk into those spaces. When I saw the officer kill him, it reminded me of different experiences where, as a metaphor, it felt as though somebody was kneeling in my neck. Like I remember once I was working at a place, and I try not to use names all the time just because people aren't here to defend themselves. But I remember I was working at this place, and one day by accident, I went to work and I was chewing gum. Now, the job that I was working on, really, you shouldn't have been chewing gum. I was absolutely wrong. The manager of the place came to me, and he literally came right here in my face and said, does that gum taste good? I mean, we're all on the floor. The job that I was doing, it's one where you're in a crowd where people would have heard him literally reprimanding me. And as he's like right here,
Yeah.
I'm looking 2 carts over, which is like from here to the door. And here's the reality. There's somebody else chewing gum,
My Lord.
just like I am, feet away from me.
But
But
said
he didn't
nothing.
stop over there,
came
but
to
he
you.
stopped to me. Now, look, I'm owning it because sometimes we can say that things are racialized. You still have to own your wrongs
Yes.
when you're wrong. So I own the gum thing, but then I see that there's a lack of fairness because if you're going to come and talk to me,
Talk
you've
to the
got
other
to
person.
talk to them. And if you don't talk to them and you only talk to me, here's what you're doing. Slowly but surely, you're kneeling the life out of me. Because now, after your manager has to come and talk to you about chewing gum as if it's the worst thing that you could ever done
Yeah.
in the world, guess what? After a while, you start to feel boxed in. Yeah.
And you know, something that really hit me was when my mom said that it's unfortunate that, but sometimes just because of a black male's physique,
Oh, my goodness.
right? So you just look big or you're tall or you look strong and you're built, they're fearful of that
Yeah.
for no reason. Because, I mean, again, I'm pointing at my husband a lot, but he is
Yeah, he's a big guy.
dude.
Big, dark
But
guy.
he is so like gentle and so soft. But if anybody
Yeah.
saw him
Yeah.
walking around with me, I
Yeah.
mean, so many times they've been like, "Oh,
Yeah.
so you brought your bodyguard?" I'm like, no, this is my husband.
Yeah.
But you know, that's the presence that he has.
And that's how people see black men.
And I was educated on that from my mom because I was
Yeah.
like, no, really? Are you kidding me? And then the other day we were driving and a police officer pulled up behind us. And he pulled up and Keem's like, oh, he's checking
Running the plates.
Yeah, running the plates.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why is he doing that? And he's like, oh yeah, they do that sometimes. But that has never happened to me.
Right.
So for me, I'm like, you didn't do anything. You didn't run a light. You didn't run a stop sign. Nothing. You have no tickets. We clear off everything. So what's the problem?
And you know what's interesting? I'm glad you used that as an example, Deandra, because even though you have your insurance, even though you have your driver's license, even though you have your seatbelt on, let me just tell you, after 45 years of life, I've been driving since I was 18 or 16 rather.
Yeah.
Even though 99% of the time, because I remember the 1% where I was not on the up and up, let me just keep it real. But here's the reality. 99% of the time when you see a police officer get in behind you, as a black man, I get nervous. Every single time. And I'm actually more nervous when I see police pull up behind me when I'm alone, but I still feel that certain kind of way when my family's in the car and police pull up behind me. Because we've seen also on social media, and I wish I remembered his name. There was a gentleman who was driving with his girlfriend and his daughter, and I think he was reaching for his license, and that police officer shot him with his
remember that
family
story.
in the car. Now, we also have to be fair in our conversation.
Yes.
By no means are we demonizing all police.
No, we
Can
are
I
not.
just say that? And then we'll get back to our regularly
Definitely.
scheduled
Programming.
programming. We're not saying that all are the same. We're talking about perceptions, right?
Yes.
Today we're talking about race. We're talking about systemic practices and how the system is and so on and so forth. And the reality is, it just often feels like, as a black man, even though I've got a full head of gray and a gray goatee, I don't know that people see me as a businessman
Oh no.
or a contributing person.
That's secondary. That's secondary.
I'm a big black guy.
Exactly.
And
That's why
and,
it's
and
secondary.
that's hard, right? Because I'm a pastor. I am a pastor. I am a pastor. But when I drive in certain places where people may not know that Andre Anderson is a pastor, here's the thing. I'm just seen based on how people see all of this.
Exactly. Which is so sad, and it's a very negative thing, because if you weren't a black person and say you were a white person and you dressed the same way and did all the exact same things, you would be treated so differently.
Yeah, completely differently. And I used to say this to my friends, right? Because of time and age, we may not always see each other. But when we were younger, we used to have these conversations. I went to York University, so we used to have, big up to York University. Anyways, we used to sit down and we used to have these conversations. And the reality is, we don't get to change and become something different on Monday morning. And that's a big difference, right? I mean, we all would have gone to the club. We all would have done whatever in the club. We all would have dressed the same way with the pants hanging. But on Monday morning, even if I put a suit on, I'm not seen the same way as my white friends might be seen on Monday morning. They get to put their hair a little bit different. They get to whatever not. But for me, it's not necessarily the same thing. And I think that's the hard part about systemic racism. It's the hard part about watching George Floyd murdered. Because the reality is, this didn't start with that police officer. If you follow the bouncing ball of that story, it starts with him going into a store. It's assumed that his $20 bill is counterfeit. Out of that perception or that belief that, hey, this guy is doing something shady, that guy, that store owner, calls the police and weaponizes the police against another human being who also deserves to be served and protected.
I just remembered a tweet I saw. So when all of this was happening, the Shade Room, which is on Instagram, they found a tweet from a man. I don't remember his name, but he is a white man. And he said that he's around the same age as George Floyd, and he endured a similar circumstance where he went to a store with counterfeit money, and he said the only difference is he tells that story for dinner parties, and he walked out okay. But look at George Floyd's situation.
And okay, so I'm glad that you used that one. Have you seen that other video recently? It's on Facebook, but I'm not sure about Instagram. Remember, I'm a boomer, so I'm more on Facebook than I am on Instagram. But here's the video. And I don't know that it's a real video. I think it's just that they were putting on a skit to kind of show what life really looks like. Black guys leaving the store. The security stops him and says, "Let me see your receipt." Then there's two white women that come behind him, and he says to them, no, don't worry about it. You guys can just go through. When the white woman leaves the store, whether she's talking to her daughter or her friend, I can't remember, she says, "Did you see that?" See, we're coming back to the quote now. She says, "Did you see that?" And the reality is, that's what racism is. It's the subtleties. There's an assumption that even though I have a plastic bag, you watched me purchase this thing, you watched the exchange of the debit card or the cash, you saw me pay for it, and even as I'm leaving, number one, you're gonna stop me, but here's what's even worse. I know before I get to the door that you're gonna wanna stop me. So to just be proactive, I'm going to open my bag so that I'll look less guilty of stealing, even though I know I've just purchased it.
And it's so sad, but it happens, and that's why I think our parents, so my generation, most of our parents have instilled in us, when you go to a store, leave with a receipt. And sometimes they ask you, do you want a receipt? I always take the receipt. I'd rather throw it out myself when I get home than to leave the store without a receipt. Because even if you say, oh, I purchased it with my debit card and I can pull it up on the app, all they see is the total that you spent. They don't see each item that was purchased, right? And it's those, like you're saying, those subtle things where we have to remember on our part, which is sad, and I don't like that I now, if I have children, should have to tell my child, don't leave a store without a receipt, because if you leave the store without a receipt, you might get in trouble, and they might have to call me to take
don't forget to ask for a plastic bag.
That too.
Look, let me tell you something. You know one thing I never do? Doesn't matter. I am not going to, hear me, even if I've purchased it, you will never, even at this age, even if I'm dressed in this suit, I'm never going to leave a store without the plastic bag from the store. Now, let me add one more component to this, and we were talking about this right before we went live today. Let's talk a little bit about code switching as well. Because here's the other thing, Deandra, or Dee Dee, right? Whatever you want to call it. Here's the other thing. when we go into stores, especially when I was younger, my parents would tell us before we went in there,
Yeah.
please make sure you conduct yourself in a certain kind of way. But we weren't given that disclaimer when we would go into the West Indian store.
Oh, no.
We could go into the West Indian store, we could laugh like we wanted to,
yourself.
we could, you know, eat the cocoa bread and the beef patty, maybe even before we got to the till, we know we're gonna purchase it. But if we go to the Bay,
Oh, no.
you can't bring your cocoa bread behavior
No,
to
no.
the Bay.
No.
As a matter of fact, sometimes the way we had to walk through the store when we were like walking through, I'm like, who are we?
And you have to dress a certain way or be a certain way, conduct yourself in a certain manner. And I've done that so many times. I mean, born in Jamaica, born and
Big up
raised
Jamaica.
in Jamaica.
No,
I'm sorry.
we're not shooting up the place. That again is another one of the stereotypes. By the way, what she did just now, ignore it. Those are water bullets. Okay, as you were. Yeah.
So, coming from Jamaica, we used to visit New York a lot because we have family in New York, right?
Of course you do.
And my grand aunt, I remember her telling this, or my mom reminded me of it the other day. She used to say she used to love that my sister and I would go visit her, and we conducted ourselves well because we spoke properly.
Yeah.
We weren't the kids in Jamaica who would be running down the street saying, "Hey."
You were right.
You know?
Yeah.
See, I'm doing code switching right now for you guys.
That's right.
And
She could have given you the patois, however.
I could have.
Yeah.
But, you know, I don't want to lose some of you.
Yeah.
Don't want to have to put captions
The
and
captions on the
subtitles
bottom.
across
But there is no
the screen.
translation for those captions. I didn't
Which
see a
is true.
patois translation in Google.
Yes.
Sorry, anyways.
So it's those subtle things. And even coming up here, you know, learning to speak like a Canadian so that you can excel and be successful.
Right.
Because if I came to Canada and I spoke my patois, do you really think I would get a job?
Absolutely
Anywhere?
not.
Even in the Jamaican store, they might say something.
But here's the thing, even amongst, and this is the power of systemic racism, because even as Caribbean folk, there are different dialects throughout the various islands.
Yes.
And so deeply rooted is systematic racism that we even look down at the different dialects as if there's a different hierarchy. And we're still talking about code switching, right? And so here's the problem. The problem is that systematic racism doesn't just impact black people in the context of white people. And again, we're not demonizing white people. We're just having a conversation. But the impact of having to code switch even impacts how we see ourselves amongst each other.
Yep.
And that's why I've always said racism is going to be a hard beast to kill.
Yes.
Because it's not just about, and I know people think it's about black and white. It's not about black and white.
Not black and white.
It's about justice. So the reality is that until we see how racism impacts the broader community, the impact of what it looks like within ourselves, we're in trouble.
We are in trouble. You okay?
Yeah, I'm okay.
Oh, okay. That's a little concern.
My throat is dry.
You know, baby boomers and all, you gotta be careful. I kid. But you're making some very valid points as it pertains to the systematic racism or injustice and all aspects of it. Because, you know, when you hear some people speak a certain dialect and you're like, oh, that's a country girl. Versus, that's a city girl. Or city talk.
Or one is posh, right? So I'll never forget, we have an 8-year-old at home, right? I won't say her name because she may not appreciate what I'm going to say. One day we were role playing, and we were talking about who would we like to be. And I'll never forget, and remember, the kids, they're American and Canadian.
Yes.
Here's what she says. I don't want to be Caribbean. I want to be posh.
That's right.
So as soon as she says posh, she doesn't switch perhaps to a different island or even to America. I mean, my wife is American, I'm Canadian. My roots are Jamaican. She doesn't default to any three based on who we are. she immediately goes across the English Channel and begins to speak British. Now, the thing is, we've never told her that British is a higher standard of dialect or communication. However, based on maybe what she's read or the TV shows what she's seen, after 8 years, she has now identified that if she wants to speak better, better is British. Now, how do you deprogram that?
It's things.
Yeah, you better come up with an answer because remember, you're Gen whatever you are.
Yes.
Millennial.
But it's because of what, like you're saying, it's what she's seeing. You know, but then how do we combat that versus, you know, what's on TV or what may be on social media or maybe even in her classroom? You know, it could be a conversation that is said there or something that may be implied by the teachers, and it's not anything to be negative.
Yeah, but this is where we break systematic racism or systemic racism. We break it by changing who the individuals are that sit in the seat of influence.
Yes.
If you see a black principal, even if he's using patois, you know, my roots are Jamaican, so I want to use that. If he's a principal speaking patois, then that's a higher dialect. Why? Because
he's educated.
He's educated. Yeah. We also need to see more images of other people groups, not necessarily high and lifted up. They need to also occupy some stereotypical places and spaces so that we all get to see us at our best and our worst. Because that's the reality. I mean, even when you watch TV, we're always thugs, drug dealers.
Killed first in the movie. We have, you know, side roles. We're just extras. We don't have major roles. I watched a video the other day of Viola Davis, and she was talking, and she was saying, as good as she can act, if another...
I saw that. Yeah, go ahead.
If a white person comes in, and I don't remember the name of the actress she said...
Meryl Streep.
Yes, they said that she is the black Meryl Streep. But she don't get black Meryl Streep
She
money.
does not. She gets you and I money.
Right?
Well, I mean, a little bit more than you. Maybe, yeah, whatever. We understand what we were trying to say.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And something like that where you're like, I've seen her in so many movies.
And she's
TV
phenomenal.
shows. She is. What did they say? The's a meme that said, if you want someone to cry, get Viola. Because it's not, and all she is giving it
She's
to you.
all in. And yet, she's still not making what she is worth. And you know, and I'm not necessarily endorsing her or not as an artist. Monique, the comedian, said the exact same thing.
Yes, I saw her video.
Right, with the whole Netflix special and whatever not. And the truth is, she is funny, but she's still not compensated for what she's worth.
Yeah.
So look, let me just say this to us. I could do this for another like hour and a half.
Yeah.
But we got to wrap this thing up. TMI. Look, all we wanted to do was just start the conversation today. Is this going to be like part 1 of 2, or is this?
Definitely, this is part 1 of 2. I'll say 2 for
We're not
now.
sure when 2 will come.
Exactly.
But this is part 1 of.
But this topic is so deep. Systematic racism and injustice, social injustice, and we need to touch on the Canadian aspect, but we're just giving you some, you know, backstories of how this all came about and what's really pushing us forward, because this thing that is racism is something that isn't small. So for us to even compact it in this show it's unreal.
It's TMI.
That's right.
Look.
Thought-provoking, motivational, inspirational.
Inspiration.
We're here for you.
Yeah, man. Thanks for joining us. Please make sure that you like, share,
subscribe, click the bell so you are notified when we drop a video.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching.
All right. Peace out.